We're looking at lines of evidence again. That's the channel that said that evolution means we should have one shared global human language. This channel's kind of an untapped gold mine. Is that a mixed metaphor? Do you tap a gold mine? Probably not. Gold isn't really known for flowing well. Anyway, this video had irritating background music, you know, inspirational stuff to make you turn your brain off. I found it annoying after like 10 seconds, so I got rid of it.
Love. The single most important feature in all of human life.
Yeah, that's probably true for a lot of people. I think a lot of people would agree with you on that.
It's the centerpiece of some of the greatest books ever written and the greatest movies ever filmed. It's the focus of thousands upon thousands of songs across every genre.
Black metal? Well, I guess black metal does have a lot of love songs. They're just usually proclaiming their love for Satan.
We repeat lyrics like, "Love makes the world go round," and "Love is all you need."
No, I don't do that. I don't do that.
I don't do that, yeah. That doesn't make sense. It's distracting my spirit.
And this is not exclusive to our culture and language.
You're kidding me.
People of every race, nation, and tongue talk about, depict, and celebrate love in their songs, stories, and daily lives.
Surely not. What about those... Who should I target for this joke that YouTube won't ban me for? Oh, I know. What about those damn mole people who live inside the hollow earth? Bunch of barbarians. They probably eat their young. That's the thing moles do. Probably.
But where does love come from?
I think Alfred Southwick invented it. Or was that the electric chair? I always get those two mixed up.
Why did humans start loving one another in the first place?
What other place you gonna start in?
And as we exalt love as the highest of all actions and emotions, how can we even be sure that it's a good thing?
You just said humans think it's so good that they make all their movies and books and songs about it. What more do you need to know?
Your answer to these questions rests heavily upon the worldview you bring to the discussion.
I mean, yeah. Your answers to a question tend to rest on your opinions relevant to the question, yeah.
From the biblical worldview, love comes from God.
Yeah, he kind of delivers it to you in a little package, the same way the stork delivers a baby.
God himself is love, the very embodiment of it.
Saying God is synonymous with love implies that he's just a feeling, which doesn't sound so far off the mark. But I always find this funny when people say God is love, because then you can look at 1 Corinthians 13 and read, "Love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth." And then you flip to the book of Job and you realize that if God's claiming to be what was just described, he's full of it. If the book of Job doesn't do it for you, flip to any other book.
As he created mankind, he imparted the concept and emotion of love and gave us each other to share this love.
Yeah, I know. Same as the answer to every other question you ever encounter. Why is it like that? I don't know. Probably God did it. I'm into this stuff, but it gets a little tedious even for me. I'm not too into this video. I think I'm going to crack open the whiskey. It'll make it go faster.
He did not want man to be alone, but created marriage, the family, and eventually the society in which people could share love with one another and care for each other.
Getting married and sticking close to your family and living in a society kind of seem like things we decide to do. What do you mean God created it? Like he gave us a pamphlet to suggest that maybe that would be a good idea?
It's a simple, straightforward origin story for why humans care so much about love and elevate it so highly.
Is it, though? Simple and straightforward? It seems to rest on quite a few pretty complex assumptions. Like that there's this infinite being outside the universe that is also, for some reason, the embodiment of a human feeling. Like he literally is the feeling of people caring about each other. Even though the feeling itself isn't actually a thing, the people are the things who do the thing, or who have the mental state. So he's not even a thing as such, he's a mental state. But he's still capable of creating a universe and then creating people, and he creates the people to have the mental state that is also him, and live in families and make societies, I guess. And so humans were just wandering around caring for each other, but not actually doing anything about it, until the extra universal emotion of love came along and said, hey, listen, you could decide to like stick together in pairs for life, and like have kids, and you could live with those kids, and then also you could live together with other people in groups. I gotta say, none of this seems simple or straightforward to me. This seems incredibly overcomplicated, totally convoluted, and extremely implausible, aside from the fact that I'm not even convinced it makes any sense.
But what if you don't believe in God?
Nothing. Pretty much works the same.
What if you hold that all matter and life sprung into existence from nothing?
Oh, then you're jumping to very weird conclusions. This is a list, right? You're not trying to equate that with not believing in God, right? That'd be a silly thing, so you wouldn't do that.
And developed over time. In that framework, how did love originate?
In what framework? That the whole universe sprung into existence from nothing? I have no idea. Go ask people in that universe. Aren't you a Christian? Don't you think the whole universe sprang into existence out of nothing? So why don't you tell me?
Evolutionists like to theorize that love is an adaptation we developed over millennia, long ago.
Over millennia. You're aiming a little low there.
In the race for survival, our early ancestors would have begun to develop an instinctual sense that connection and mutual care is advantageous.
No. We're not talking about the sense that something is advantageous. That's about why people developed the sense that they have, or the feeling that they have. That's not the feeling itself. The feeling is what you're used to, that feeling of connection. Why they have that feeling isn't something they would be aware of. They just have it because the ones who had it happened to survive easier. You don't have to have a sense of why you have a feeling to have the feeling, as evidenced by your video.
So, love evolved first as a purely pragmatic function.
Yes, but not from our perspective. Only from the standpoint of an observer of selection pressures.
We love because it keeps us alive and offers us the best chance to extend our lineage.
On a selection level, yes, but not on a personal level. We as individuals love because we can't do otherwise. It's in our nature to do so. And yes, I'm keeping these things separate for a reason.
This makes love a byproduct of Darwinian survival of the fittest.
Yes, love increases fitness for organisms that live in the way that we live. And it seems to have gone pretty well. Look how we've made out as a species.
Evolution's function of natural selection, in which the ability to adapt greatly increases a creature's and a species' chances of survival.
An odd way to put that. You talk as if what's being selected for is a species' ability to adapt, like as individuals, and that having this ability increases the creature's ability to survive. But no, it's that survival or lack thereof causes adaptation in the population. And yeah, maybe that adaptation through natural selection in some cases would lead to a very adaptable organism, humans in fact being one of them, and maybe that ability would increase the ability to survive. But that's a possible result of natural selection. That's not the cause of the function of natural selection. Maybe you know better, maybe it's just some weirdness in how you phrased it, but it sounds like you're mixing up two different things.
Selected those human ancestors who first learned to share love.
Learned? No, we're not talking about learning.
Because creatures who can bond together are better suited to survival, they are the fittest.
In some cases, yes. But as we discussed in the other video about language, there's not just the fittest. You mentioned in that video that there are more finalized versions of animals today that are more fit, I guess, for just the general environment. And that's not how it works. There's no universal the environment. There's no universal the fittest. There's no one way of life that's just the ultimate best way of life for an animal. It depends on the situation, which is why evolution never stops, because change never stops. And it's also why evolution is not just a ladder from worse to better to best. Take all the humans in the world and toss them all in the ocean without life jackets. Let's see how fit our social lifestyle makes us then.
Nature selected out those who developed the capacity for love. And that's why we have an entire human race that values love.
Yeah, we do much better working together than working apart. We do much better being more integrated into society with each other than we do without that. We do much better caring for our kids than we do not doing that. Reliance on society and on our families increases our reliance on those things, which increases our reliance on those things in a feedback loop. Yeah, not much detail is really required. I'm just giving the basic outline of the idea. If anyone's interested in the origin of love, they can go and look into that themselves. I'm more interested in the terrible arguments in the video, so let's get to those.
Not very romantic, is it?
Why? It posits that the reason we love each other isn't just preference. It isn't just arbitrary. It's not just that way because someone made some choice that that's how it's going to be, or commanded that that's how it's going to be. It's a product of a deep need, one with, in many cases, life or death consequences. You quite literally are the result of millions of generations of organisms living together and relying on each other and bonding with each other and making profoundly important decisions based on how they feel about one another that will affect not just their lives, but the lives of every one of their descendants all the way down to us. In many cases, risking their lives or sacrificing themselves for each other so that the one that ultimately passed its genes on survived. How you feel towards your parents or your spouse or your child has a millions of years long history, millions of stories of commitment and shared struggle against a harsh world, and shared triumphs and defeats. of peaceful nights safe with the group, or cold, terrible, lonely, hungry nights wishing for the group. Stories of mothers having to hold and be close to their babies for those babies to have any chance of surviving, and the babies clinging desperately to their mothers as their only hope, as their entire world. A need of those people for each other so strong, of such life or death importance, that it had to develop into one of the tightest bonds there is. Something which, if broken, causes the worst pain imaginable, because of just how deeply those barely countable generations have relied on one another, because of uncountable stories of them surviving together or dying apart. And every type of relationship has a similar kind of history. It's an endless heap of other stories about other individuals, or other families, or other friendships, or other societies, not just some theoretical abstraction. Love isn't just something you do. It's not just something you feel. It's something that's deeply a part of what you are, and which connects you back to countless ancestors. You are a product of their lives and their stories. That means something. It means a hell of a lot more than some guy told you, hey, do families and societies now. That's what I'd like to see you do now just 'cause. I mean, not that it matters. If it's true, it doesn't matter if it's romantic. Whether your little heart goes aflutter when you hear it doesn't really mean anything. Studying human genitalia isn't romantic. That doesn't mean it's not what it is.
But the more important question is it logical?
Yeah?
Is this a satisfactory explanation for love's origin?
Well, yeah, it's simple and straightforward, and it fits the known facts without adding too many unknown postulates.
No, it is not.
Gee, I didn't see that coming.
And why isn't it?
Because God did it.
Because human love regularly defies the cold, calculating nature of survival of the fittest.
Love isn't survival of the fittest. The emotions that you have don't have to be cold and calculating to make you fit to survive. Besides which, even survival of the fittest isn't cold and calculating. You talk about it like it's a serial killer. You did this in the last video too, talking about evolution as if it has a personality. It's remarkable how badly you tend to miss the point.
The two are not compatible.
You just mentioned the idea that creatures who can bond together are more fit to survive. Yes, they're compatible.
So many of the ways we love each other as humans runs directly counter to evolutionary sensibility.
We don't have evolutionary sensibility, we have human sensibility. Now, I assume you're going to say something about love making us make technically irrational choices sometimes, from the perspective of some cold, calculating outsider. And you're not wrong, but those behaviors are a byproduct of something that's extremely beneficial. A trait doesn't have to have exactly perfectly rational, optimal outcomes in every situation. The benefits just have to outweigh the downsides, like on average.
If we are motivated purely by survival, why do we care about orphans and the elderly?
We're not motivated purely by survival. We're motivated by love. And yes, survival instinct is there as well, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily more powerful than the love instinct. It can be. They're both very powerful. If someone has to run into a burning building to save their kid, they may or may not do it. But if someone's kid is sick, that usually pretty powerful love instinct is going to easily overpower whatever survival benefit the person might think they would gain from their kid dying. Like, oh, I could afford a couple more sandwiches this month if I didn't have to pay for this kid's bills. We're not loving each other as some kind of conscious, pragmatic choice. We're not like, oh, this has a survival benefit to the species, so I'll just decide to feel this way today. Maybe tomorrow, if it happens to not be as beneficial, I'll change my mind. That is not the idea under discussion.
Orphans are typically too young to work or provide much utility.
Says you. Their little hands are great for picking cotton out of those machines. If an adult tried to do that with their big hands, they'd lose a finger.
Caring for these groups requires sharing valuable resources like our time, money, and food. From a survival instinct, they are not the fittest.
That says nothing about whether they're fit. To make your point, what you should be saying is, if we're sharing our valuable time and money and food with useless children, we're not the fittest. That would be the point. Why do I have to be the one who makes your stupid argument for you? Now, I will agree in a sense that excessive altruism is not necessarily something that's useful for survival. If you spend all of your time every day giving everything you have to the orphans, starving yourself, shivering out in the cold because you gave all your food and all your money and all your clothes and everything to the kids, and you do all this and get nothing in return, and then you die, yeah, you probably have more altruism than is in any way useful for survival. survival or reproduction. And that, I would say, is why it's so exceedingly rare to see something like that. We see altruism in people. We see people caring about children who have no immediate, identifiable, practical benefit to society right now as workers or what have you. And that's a product of this instinct that's very beneficial to individuals and to the society that they live in, of having concern for others and caring what happens to them. And a person being this way does tend, usually, to have benefits for that person. It makes them more liked by the group. It probably makes them better at maintaining relationships. It probably provides benefits to their own children as well. And it comes with very few downsides, really. Sure, occasionally maybe something happens that makes this sort of altruism a negative for the individual. One individual. Like, I don't know, somebody sees a kid drowning in a fast-running river and jumps in to try to save the kid and then ends up drowning themselves. Sure, stuff like that happens occasionally. But on a statistical level, over the entire population, I don't really see how the negatives would outweigh the positives. But for what you're saying to make any sense, they would have to.
And should be left behind.
Why should they? From the perspective of a human being with the instinct to care for other people, why should they be left behind? We're not natural selection. You realize this, right? If you want to personify natural selection as this person acting in a cold and calculating way, like when your God gives babies cancer because it's part of his grand plan, except of course evolution doesn't have intention like your God supposedly does, but pretending it's a person who does, well, that's what he's doing. We're not him. We're humans. We tend to have an instinct towards caring for others, and we're wildly successful because of it. As a population, at the moment, we seem to be incredibly fit for survival. So whatever you think we're doing wrong, it can't be that wrong. Sure, we could start ritualistically stoning the orphans, but do you actually think that would have beneficial effects on society and human survival? Are you really suggesting that that's the most practically beneficial course of action? That society would be the one with the most optimal level of human flourishing? Really?
In a similar fashion, we must question the usefulness of most medical treatments.
Medical treatments? You mean those things that the entire point of them is to take people who otherwise might not be fit to survive by some sort of disease or injury that if left untreated would kill them, and make those people fit to survive? Those things that radically expand the sphere of what counts as the fittest? So causing more survival of the fittest by making more people the fittest reduces survival of the fittest. I'm sorry, is your brain on backwards?
If natural selection rules the day, those with diseases and other complicated, long-term health issues have been selected out.
No, they haven't. They're still alive. The dead people have been selected out.
Caring for them slows down society's progress by diverting time and effort to accommodating their weaknesses.
I don't know what to tell you, man. I mean, we got 8 billion people out here. It was like 2 billion 100 years ago. If that's what the species being slowed down by caring for people with health issues looks like, I'd hate to see what it looks like sped up.
Even babies born prematurely fail the test of natural selection.
Not if they survive, they don't.
The amount of effort and resources needed to keep them alive is significant, and many of them deal with lifelong struggles as a result.
Everybody got struggles, man.
And, should they grow to have children of their own, they may pass on unsuitable medical conditions.
From being premature? What?
From an evolutionary perspective,
Yeah, that's not a thing.
the love that pushes us to help these people is a foolish trade-off that ultimately harms humanity in the long run.
It seems to be going okay. You're like one of those prophets of doom on the street corner, except you're saying like the end is 500 years ago, because everything we're doing right now that's caused us to have this insane success as a species, you're saying should have led to our demise by making us unfit for survival. What do I have to do, just wave around wildly to indicate that all of reality disagrees with you?
For one more example, consider the case of the greatest love known to mankind.
A mother for her baby.
That of a married couple.
Oh, really? Okay, suck it, moms.
If this is where love evolved first,
Huh? Love evolved first in a married couple? What are you even trying to say?
and all love flows out from it,
I have no idea what that's supposed to mean.
we must question its utility for survival most of all.
Well, marriage historically, the reason it was made up was to get people to make a kid and then take care of the kid. I don't think there's much debate to be had about the evolutionary utility of taking care of your babies.
It makes sense that marriage is of great utility for survival and procreation.
Oh, okay. Good then. You said that was your last example, so video over?
Both the individual and the species are greatly benefited by couples who commit to each other.
Yeah, Yeah, I'm with you. I'm on board the couples are a good thing train. I don't know if you noticed, but I did the thing myself. So yeah, I mean, I'm on board.
As it has proven health benefits and makes reproduction and raising children more easily accomplished for both parties.
I don't know what you mean by health benefits, other than if you're in a monogamous relationship and you didn't have STDs to start with, you're not passing any around, which is nothing to be sneezed at, because then you'll pass your diseases to your spouse through your snottle.
But what about when old age sets in?
Considering how this video's gone so far, I'm gonna guess your advice is jump off a bridge.
What about when one of the two gets cancer?
Well, 1 out of 2 is 1/2, so I guess the couple has 1/2 cancer.
In the evolutionary worldview, the relationship has now outlasted its utility. There is no reason for the love to continue.
What? Again, we don't engage in relationships with each other out of some sort of calculation about evolutionary utility. We engage in them out of a bonding instinct. It's not like that instinct suddenly stops once one person gets sick. What mechanism are you proposing that would cause that type of reaction? That makes no sense. What evolutionary pressure do you think that there is for 2 old people to break up and stop talking to each other because one of them's sick? Why is this an evolutionary requirement? These videos are absolutely deranged. Everything this guy says is wrong in so many different ways at the same time. If I wanted to, I could probably spend 4 hours or more going through different responses.
In fact, it may even be a detriment to man's longevity, as caregiving for a sick spouse takes a significant toll on one's own health.
It's kind of funny that you chose old people for this. Old people who are way past the point of being in any way likely to reproduce. People who more than likely already passed their genes on because it's an old married couple. Guess what? They're fit. Not only did they survive till old age, they reproduced and passed on their genes. Everything seems to be working just fine. Again, your objection is just, this isn't exactly perfect according to my weird little calculation. Yeah, sure, it's not. These people aren't thinking like eugenicists. Oh, I bet I'll have to deal with some YouTube shenanigans for saying that word. But look at the results of these people's relationship. You're saying there's a problem here, but I'm not seeing what it is.
And it prevents the healthy spouse from fully contributing to the society's development.
I feel I should clarify something for you right now. Evolution isn't a process of developing societies. It's a process of passing on genes. Yeah, maybe grandma's got cancer and grandpa's not out there with an L gun putting on a roof. That doesn't imply that she or her husband failed to survive and failed to reproduce. And it doesn't mean anyone else does either. If anything, this instinct to love each other probably increased the chances of that happening. It's been profoundly useful on an evolutionary level. This is what's historically been the basis for selection. There's no reason to think that there's a similar selection pressure for being able to turn that feeling on and off like a tap.
With each of these examples, the logical conclusion of the evolutionary approach is clear.
No offense, but based on your track record, you are not a person I'm going to take very seriously when you talk about logical conclusions.
Our love is a benefit only to a point, but then it becomes a detriment.
Let's say that's true. Let's say that over the course of a lifetime, there's a certain amount of benefit to love, and there's a certain amount of detriment to love, in terms of survival and reproduction on a statistical population basis. The question isn't just whether there's any downside at all to the emotion of love or any other feature of any organism. The question is, to what extent is it beneficial, usually, and to what extent is it detrimental, usually? Do the detrimental outcomes outweigh the beneficial ones? And in this case, the answer seems to be a resounding no. The beneficial results vastly outweigh the detrimental ones, generally speaking. Again, you're basically taking an all-or-nothing approach. Either it's 100% beneficial with no downsides, or it's not beneficial at all, and therefore could not possibly have been selected for evolutionarily. It's like saying if you're pedaling your bike to make it go faster, but there's a card stuck in the spokes that's flapping around and making you go slower, that therefore you grind to a halt. That's profoundly idiotic.
We are blinded by our sentimentality in loving the weak, making our love a weakness of its own.
Ooh, it's enough to send shivers up your spine, isn't it?
And, one wild thought, if the evolutionary view is true, we will eventually evolve beyond this inefficient love of the weak.
Yeah, and likewise, we'll all be zebras and speak Chinook jargon, the one true most fittestest language, skookum argument.
As we continue to evolve, orphanages, long-term care facilities, and even lifelong marriages will be looked upon as mistakes we had to outgrow.
I mean, it's a possibility. I see no reason in evolution or natural selection to specifically predict that, and you haven't provided one. Yeah, you've provided reasons based on some nonsense you've made up in your head and called evolution, but none based on what it actually is.
We know by instinct that a society built around this view of love would be a scary, deadly place to live.
Yeah, and that's kind of the point, isn't it? That's what I was asking when I asked you if you really think that acting in this manner would improve society or improve survival for the people in it. Would it really make the average individual more successful, or would it make the population more successful? And you've just answered that question with a clear no. It would make it a scary and deadly place to live. Why would natural selection favor a social species, intentionally making its society scary and deadly? That makes no sense. It makes anti-sense. And you've just shown that in some way you understand this fact. So how have you failed in this way?
It is a morally terrible view of love.
I mean, yeah, but we're not going to have a discussion about morality here. Keep it on the purely pragmatic level like you've been so intent on doing this whole video. There's no practical benefit to acting like this. We didn't get where we are as a species by acting like this. Our lives as individuals aren't improved by acting like this. Not generally, anyway. Our chances of survival and our chances of reproduction are not helped by thinking in this way, which is why most people don't think the way you insist they should. Most of the time, it would be disastrous on an individual basis, on a group basis, on a broader social basis, and on a species basis. For a species like us, that kind of approach is a dead end. This cold and calculating survival of the scariest and deadliest thinking that you're insisting is the only way for us to survive, that you think is the only way of life that makes any actual practical sense for a person to have, lest they die or fail to reproduce, leads to our death. That's what scary and deadly means. You couldn't be more back-asswards on this issue if you tried, for the reasons that you yourself pointed out.
To follow a purely natural selection-based definition of love is a position that does not hold up to examination.
You don't even know what it is. Don't tell me what it does or doesn't hold up to.
At some point, it has to be abandoned before it devolves into utilitarian cruelty.
Yeah, if the love instinct is evolved, that doesn't mean people are going to tend towards utilitarianism. Those two things have nothing to do with each other. Also, utilitarianism isn't cruelty. It can be. It depends on how it's approached.
But if natural selection has to be abandoned along the way, then we don't really believe in an evolutionary view of love.
Yeah, so if false statement, then it doesn't matter what you stick in the then part.
Instead, whether modern man acknowledges it or not, our understanding of love is built on the foundation of a benevolent, loving creator who has taught us how to love and expects us to care for each other.
Oh, well, since you mentioned how unromantic the evolutionary view is, how romantic that you love someone because you were ordered to, and he had to teach you how to do it first. And if he hadn't done that, your mindset is that as soon as any sign of weakness of any sort crops up, your partner should be dropped like a hot potato. I'd be better off without you, you deadweight, but God expects me to care for you, so, Wow, I think it's getting warm under my bodice. Well, anyway, that was quite an adventure. This whole channel's like this. The thing is a fucking goldmine. So who knows, maybe I'll do some more later. But for now, thank you for watching. I did crack open the whiskey and I'm amazed I'm this coherent. If you would, before you go, please do give the video a like and click subscribe if you haven't. If you really like the channel, maybe consider supporting. A couple bucks per video or per month helps a huge amount, and enormous thanks to all of my supporters who've already made that choice. Early access, email list, list.logicked.com, and I'll see you next time.